Hello friends, how are you? Happy 2025. I hope the holiday season and the new year have been kind to you. I had a really great couple of weeks. I flew to Vegas for a week, did lots of touristy things. I just recently bought this guy, which he's gonna sit in the background of this video. I don't even care that it's not on theme. He's the cutest thing. But we're not here to talk about New Year's resolutions or resetting or anything like that. We're here to talk about our favorite two guys, because I haven't made a 21 Pilots update video in 6 months, I want to say, and that is impossibly long. It feels like so much has happened. And the thing is, they did their entire US and Canada tour in between my last video and now, and I had not been paying attention at all. And then this week I was like, okay, let me check in, let me see what's going on. And it was so much more than I could have even imagined. So we're gathering here today to go over all of it, to catch up, because they do start the next leg of the tour this week. Which, if this first part of the tour has showed us anything, it's that they're gonna be doing more. So we gotta catch up now before it becomes too much. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, be sure to check out my other videos where I talked about the entire lore behind 21 Pilots, because along with making great music, they have a really great story going on, and it's a really fun world to fall into, so if you're able to experience it for the first time, I highly recommend it. Let's talk about what's happened in the past couple of months. And of course, because I wasn't following every single thing, I'm sure there are going to be things that I missed, either because they just weren't talked about as much, or because I'm recapping months of information and sometimes things slip by. So if there's anything that you saw or that you thought was exciting, please let me know. There are so many little details, and I'm sure there's things that I'm just not gonna think about. So picking up right where that last video left off, we were talking about how there was this Twitter account called The Only Band in the World, and we were like, okay, maybe this is something 21 Pilots related because they've got the symbol and they've got the tape, but they don't seem to be officially affiliated with the band in any way. Tyler and Josh and nobody that works with them was saying anything about it, so it's like, okay, is this just a fan-made thing that's coming out? Is this something that's related to the band? Is it directly tied to the lore? And it ended up being a book about the band and about the work that they do. Like a little exclusive content thing, which is fine and cool, but not what people were wanting it to be, because it could have been something big and exciting, but it was just, you know, it's another thing. It is what it is. I didn't really see anybody talking about it past that, besides to say that it was way too pricey for what it was. But speaking of cost, that's not the only complaint that people had about how much these 21 Pilots events and items were costing. So first, the ticket prices for the actual concert itself. A lot of people were saying they could not afford the concert tickets, which I get it, you know? You're a big band, you gotta make a lot of money, especially when you're doing these big budget things like the music videos and everything else. And that's not even to say that the money necessarily goes to them or their projects, because a lot of it also goes to the venues, etc., etc. And you don't always get the most control over how much things cost, but their tickets for the concert were very, very expensive. At least for what fans wanted. But then on top of that, at the start of July, they announced the fan premiere exhibit, FPE, which had just been like a stationary one-time thing that people could go to. You weren't allowed to take pictures. It was kind of this exclusive event, but they announced they're going to be taking it on the road for the US and Canada portion of the tour, which means fans would have to pay even more money to get pre-show access to merch and a look at the exhibit of the world that they've created, stuff from the music videos and everything else. There was a lounge, and there were many more surprises along the way. And again, this wasn't received well, largely because of the price. On top of the tour tickets, now people have to pay an extra $150 that, because this was announced like hours before the tour went on sale, you couldn't be saving up for it in advance, you know? Like, if you wanted to go, you had to just have the money already. It wasn't something you could have planned to save up for, whereas with concert tickets, they usually give you a week or two so that you know, oh, I need to have this much money so that I can do this. But announcing an exclusive event like this hours before people are able to buy it is just not really practical for a lot of people. It's promoted as a way for big-time fans to see these things that they're really excited about and the things that they care about, but it wasn't really presented in a way that was for the fans. It was for the people that have a lot of money. But the idea itself is cool, you know, bringing an exhibit on the road when it's a flashback tour and you're getting to see all the actual things that were in the content. It's a cool idea. It just wasn't possible for a lot of people. And as we'll see, this exhibit did play a major role in everything that we're going to be talking about today. It's a really cool way to share some secrets. So on August 15th, they started the tour, and aside from a single clip of Tyler performing Lavish, I did not see anything from the performance. When I came back, I was so surprised to see how much had happened. And as with all the other videos, I'm going to be linking people that had been talking about it in the moment, or people that have since posted analysis videos of what it could all mean. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of ideas floating around, and me making this would not be possible without them doing that. So as the tour was starting up, before the shows had even started, people already noticed that something wasn't quite right, because on their tour truck outside, the logo was not how it usually is. It was missing the dash in the very middle, so it had the two longer lines, but the one connecting them was not there, and it could be a weird little printing error, which would be kind of a huge mistake to make on the side of your tour bus. And when people look closer, they realized that that dash was also missing on Josh's drums. There are lots of ideas about what the dash could represent. It could be the connection between the two Clancy albums, suggesting that we're currently, with this tour, in between the two. It could be a way to represent Dema, because when the band went silent all those years ago, that era was represented with just a little dash. So by getting rid of it in the logo, you could be suggesting that Dema doesn't have control over it, they're not there at all, which, as we'll see, that's clearly not the case. Dema is very much still aware and present in this tour. But despite the ideas that were floating around, the dash was added back to the tour truck, which it looked like it was just a little piece of yellow tape. So it could be brushed aside as a little mistake that somebody fixed in an easy way, but it also disappears just for a second while they're performing Heathens. Their symbol is flashing up on the screen, and then there are moments while it's flashing where the middle goes away, and it could, again, just be stylistic. It's flashing, things are disappearing and coming back. But it's weird that it happened twice. And not even twice, it was also on the drums. It's weird that it kept happening, right? And I'm sorry to say I don't have a resolution for that. That's something to note. For whatever reason, the dash in the middle of their symbol just keeps on going away. Is it possible that the design of the video during Heathens just happened to align with a mistake that we saw on the truck? I guess. But it's really unlikely that they could make that big of a mistake in so many visible places and not have it mean something, so I don't know. I didn't really see any other conversation about that, but it's something to keep in the back of your head. What could it mean? Why would they get rid of that? Or if it is an error, why is it happening so consistently? But aside from that, we are brought to night one of the tour, which gives us the first of many new letters. In the past, we had the letters from Clancy on the Dema website, and those were released every so often, and they would give us a little bit of who Clancy the character is, but this time we are getting a lot of letters one after the other, all found within the fan premiere exhibit. So right from the presentation, if we're just looking at this and comparing it to what we've seen before, there's obviously the big detail, which is that this is a physical letter. This is a page that's sitting on an exhibit. It was stapled to the tent in the Bandito area of the exhibit. All of the other letters that we've received have been online, except for when they were doing the stuff leading up to Clancy, because they mailed certain people Dema restricted pages. But that was something that they mailed physically to people, and it had the Dema logo at the top of it. But aside from that, everything that we've gotten has been largely online, and now we're seeing just this piece of paper on a Bandito camp. But along with that, this letter is addressed to somebody named Elliot. It starts off, "Dear Elliot," and we don't know an Elliot. Besides the names of the bishops and of Clancy and the Torchbearer, we don't really know anybody's names in this world, so it's weird to all of a sudden see a regular person name. And we can quickly realize that this is a letter to or from a citizen within the walls of Dema. If something is typed, it came out of Dema, and along with that little logo at the top that marks it as a paper from Dema. It's clear that this is from the city, but it looks like it's an official document with that sigil at the top, which makes it seem like this letter is not the original one that was passed around. And we'll see why that matters in a little bit, but it's not a full letter, it's not a full page, it's ripped in half, it's crumpled. It's not like a clean, nice thing to look at. It's not like somebody took care of this page. I don't know where it has been or who has seen it, but it's clear that it's been through a lot. And what we can see on this letter, it says something like, "I am filled with trepidation, nervous that my instincts could be wrong, but I must admit that I see something in you, something that doesn't exist in the other citizens of this lifeless construct. I've noticed the way you look at my art, like you see something deeper in it, something the others do not see. It calls you, and maybe that's why I'm screaming for commonality with every brushstroke. You are the only one seeing what I hope for someone to see. My art, I hope, cries for freedom from these confines, and a whisper against the blank forces of the bishops, a whisper blank, and it rips off and you can't see the end." So who is Elliot? And who is writing this? Is it Clancy? There are a lot of questions. And honestly, for a lot of these letters, we're going to be adding more questions and not really getting any answers until the pages start to come together and then we'll see the bigger picture. The letter does have the number 001 in the top corner, which lets us know that there's probably gonna be some more. But the big thing to take away about who the writer is, which at this time we don't know, but we know that they're an artist similar to Clancy, but where Clancy uses his words and his writing, this artist does more physical work. They're doing the brush strokes, and they're struggling to find connection through this physical form of art. So once again, Dema is limiting the creativity of individuals, which leaves them feeling isolated and completely trapped. And we see somebody else that has this little spark of rebellion within them, and they're trying to paint that on whatever canvas. We can assume it's not something super obvious, you know, they're not sitting there painting giant things that are going to say we're rebelling against whatever. It's all very subtle, you know, it's all something that they're noticing within each other, and they're all coming together because they can sense that there is a disturbance within the city. The citizens are not outright saying, hey, we hate everything that's going on and we're gonna do something about it. They're just coming together privately, or so they think. The citizens are finding these small moments of connection, and it's going to lead to secretly building this rebellion, which is what we saw in the album, how Tyler and Josh were in the outside on the island, and then in Paladin Strait they're all together. So again, as we'll see, these letters are kind of transitioning us between those 2 points. And along with that, this letter does have a hidden message, or at least the beginning of one. It has bolded and doubled letters, and you take those out, they say W-E-M, which at the time gives us nothing. But because there's the 001 and we can assume that there's gonna be more letters coming out, it would only make sense that we're gonna get some more double letters, and we're gonna see what this hidden message is probably in a while. We're gonna have to wait a little bit to get the full message. And there are theories as to what the names on these letters could be. For Elliot, it could be T.S. Eliot, which is an author that's directly connected to Simone Weil, who, if you don't know who that is, she's kind of the whole reason that this story exists. Like, everything with Clancy and with Dema and all of it can pretty much be directly tied to this very real group of people. The Bourbaki group with the bishops, but specifically Simone Weil, who is the sister of one of the members. Everything in this story can be tied back to her. And it's not something that I've really gone into depth with, but that is where a lot of these names can be tied into, is people that either had similar ideas or personally worked together or something like that. But for T.S. Eliot, along with directly working together, he focused a lot on finding the meaning in life and pushing boundaries that have been set, which is a lot of what we're seeing with the themes in this album. The next letter is presented at the tour the following day. I don't think I need to say that every time. There's gonna be a letter for every single day that they're on this tour. Every day in the fan premiere exhibit, there's going to be pieces of letters, and we're gonna have to piece them together and find out what they mean. So this one appears to be just the bottom of a letter, and it says, "You're right, the only glorious quest left is beyond these walls. Clancy has exposed cracks that I am now ready to break open. We have to act fast before the bishops have a chance to react. I am willing to take the risk and stand on the side of truth. Salo Jensen." Apologies if I pronounce these names wrong, I almost definitely will. It's stressing me out, but it doesn't need to, because it's just new characters, okay? We're getting introduced to another person. The capital letters in this one are M-O-R, which still isn't enough to give us a clear anything, but seeing the name of another character does really remind us just how much work the band is putting into the story and building it and creating these characters that each have unique voices and personalities and jobs within the city, because presumably all of these new characters are gonna somehow be tied into the bigger picture. I, for one, think it would be very interesting if they just wrapped it up with an entire movie and they have all of these characters that they've already introduced, saying that the music videos are such a big budget, but then they just go and pour out like a full 2-hour movie that captures the end of the story. I think that would be wild. But they would have already established the names of these characters, and then when we see them we'd be like, I know that guy. Anyways, he's inspired or motivated or something by Clancy and his work and the rebellion against the bishops. So we're seeing how Clancy's work is influencing the citizens. Like how we saw in Overcompensate, how he was teaching them how to escape and how to rebel against what they were being taught. Now we're seeing firsthand what his impact is on these people. The bottom of the page is labeled 008, so if this is giving us an order to the letters, we've skipped ahead quite a bit. This name could be tied back to history with a bishop in the 17th century, Cornelius Jansen or Janssen or whatever. But hey, a bishop that can be directly tied by the name to the story? What? What an interesting coincidence. And again, it could be tying things that don't actually exist and just coming up with these answers when they're not really intentional. I'm sure you could search up a lot of names and get a bishop from some time in history to come up. So who's to say if this is really the answer? But it is an interesting thing to tie together so many characters, especially when you look a little bit more into the religion and everything in the real life history. But again, we're not going into all of that because I am bad at history. Letter 027 says, Dear Carta, if only you knew how long I spent washing my hands, you would know how embarrassed I am. They don't want anyone to know what we do down here. There were even laws written about what we inhale and how deeply our skin gets stained. But you must be the baker, the sleuth who found me out. Blank. Right. It's an odd seller manipulating blank. And again, it's cut off. The repeated letters from this are D and O, and what we learn from it is that Carta, who works as a baker, discovered this author doing something that they shouldn't be, or something that people aren't supposed to know about, and all we know about this person and their job is that their skin gets stained, which we've seen people's skin getting stained before when they get smeared by the bishops. But this person is working down here, which could be under the city. The letter from August 21st gives us very little to work with. It's a very small one, and it's just the bottom right corner. It says, oppressive, that has been an inspiration, this art. I only hope that you see the hues. Hope this fire you. Join our cause, I think. We need you more than. Doesn't give us a lot, does it? But this is letter 002, and it does follow similar ideas to what we saw in the first letter to Elliot. They're both talking about inspiration and seeing things that other people don't with the hues. The only capital letter is T, but people saw W-E-M-T. And because the bottom left of this page is missing, because we can figure that 1 and 2 go together, then whatever the hidden message is can be completed, at least on this page, by that bottom piece. And W-E-M-T kind of looks like we must do something. Because they look like they fit together, it's kind of assumed that this one final piece is going to give us U-S, and then we're going to get the first 2 words of this bigger message. It doesn't give us much, but it does show us that we're going to be getting completed pages at some point. The next letter, August 22nd, is 018, and this one is a pretty long one. It says, I have to confess, my admiration for you is not my only reason for writing. It's clear you have seen freedom. I know you've made it outside once or twice, and this seems to be how you tell your tale. There's so many of us that want to feel whatever you've felt, to know what weightlessness could possess someone to move as freely as you do. Clancy's audacity has awakened something in us all, and a soul as beautiful as yours must want to get out again. Maybe you want to get out once and for all. I would love to tell you our plan, Chasing Freedom, Barya. The letters D, I, and F are capitalized here, and Good Day Dema on YouTube noticed that the name could be tied to an author that was connected to George Orwell, who was a big influence in the Dema story. And that author, Arturo Barya, had also written a book that was edited by T.S. Eliot, which Eliot is another one of our characters. And again, in this letter, we're seeing mention of how what Clancy is doing is inspiring them to take action. They've seen what's possible, specifically because of what he's done, and they want it for themselves. So whether it be creatively or socially or whatever else, they know that there is more to life than what they've been going through. They're willing to put up a fight to break free because they see what's out there. The next day brings us another short letter and another name, but people were right about that final piece with the US because this completes our first page. There's no number on this one, but the shape and the text lines up with the first 2 pieces that we already had. And then the completed letter says, Dear Elliot, I am filled with trepidation, nervous that my instincts could be wrong, but I must admit that I see something in you, something that doesn't exist in the other citizens of this lifeless construct. I've noticed the way you look at my art, like you see something deeper in it, something the others do not see. It calls you. And maybe that's why I'm screaming for commonality with every brushstroke. You are the only one seeing what I hope for someone to see. My art, I hope, cries for freedom from these confines, and a whisper against the oppressive forces of the bishops, a whisper that has become a scream. Clancy's bravery has been an inspiration to me, and has inspired this art. I only hope that I'm right to assume that you see the hues that the others cannot. I hope that this fire you feel can motivate you to join our cause. I think you are one of us, and we need you more than ever. Will you join us? Hoping, Arya. So we get the name of the artist Arya, and they're hoping that Elliot appreciates their art for what it's meant to do, and puts out an invitation to say, hey, you should join our rebellion. And around this time, the guys also posted an 8-minute tour video to the band's YouTube channel, which is kind of just showing off behind the scenes or during the performance. They usually do this. It's usually just a really fun, nice time just to see this more personal side of things, like the moments before they step onto the stage or right after, or, you know, their little routines that they have. It adds some humanity to what is otherwise an unfathomably large show. Letter 15 introduces Sarah, saying, Dear Sarah, I suppose I haven't hidden myself as well as I had hoped. Perhaps my arrogance at times has let my tongue slip in a conversation or two, and word has gotten around. It doesn't take long here. Rumors seem to bounce off the circular walls quite rapidly, and here I am, already hearing my own, they want me, I have, make it, this new. And the real life name Sarah could be tied to Sarah Ahmed, who has been compared to Simone with their ideas on rejection of structures and finding happiness outside of them. Letter 12 is on August 27th, and it introduces another character. The world just keeps growing. This is the bottom of another page, and it says, "System is the only help. Our enemy is the structure. Our enemy is their lies. I want to be part of what you are planning. United, Leo." The capital letters are BE, and the name Leo could be referring to Leo Strauss, who is a scholar of political philosophy. Again, similar views as Simone. And it was around this time that Discord Click made a website that sort of unofficially puts together all the letters so that we can keep track of them not only in order, but pieced together as the full pages. It's really good if you want to see what was released and how it comes together, and also if you want to read it more clearly, because the pictures that people were taking of the physical pages can sometimes be difficult to decipher, but that website puts it all out really clearly. And then letter 11 brings us closer to completing another letter, starting with, "Dear Nia, I'm embarrassed. For the hours that I drift off, following the city's hidden catacombs, it's never crossed my mind that someone would notice my absent-mindedness. It's true, these paths, and followed, concrete facade more times," and it cuts off. The only repeated letter here is I, and I didn't really see people talking about real-life name connections for this one. Which the thing is, even if they do connect in real life, does that actually add anything to the story, or is it just like a fun Easter egg? Like, is the significance of these real-life people to each other somehow going to affect how they interact within the story, or is it more just a cool thing that they're all able to be tied to real-life people, but it doesn't actually mean anything besides the fact that they are connected? Just a thought, you know? I have no clue how significant it is, if it really matters that they all can be tied to real life people and things, or if it's more just a cool thing. But there are black smudges on this page, which could just be extra wear and tear, like the rips and wrinkles that we've been seeing, but it looks like the same black ink that's from the bishops. So either somebody who was smeared, or maybe the bishops themselves with their grimy little fingers are dealing with this page. And then we get a quick break from the letters because Blurryface decided to be active on Twitter. On August 28th, the account posted, "We have always watched your diversions," which specifically the word diversions goes all the way, it calls back to the start of Trench, where they had the complete diversion show. That was like the first performance of the songs in Trench, and that's also a lyric in the song. "We have always watched your diversions." How good is a diversion if they're always watching it? People at the concert that night also noticed that Tyler usually has red text on his shirt and red tape, but they both changed to black during the performance instead. And on top of this, while they perform The Judge, they'll have up on the screens fans singing the start of the song. And usually it goes off fine. It's a cute little moment where you get to appreciate the people that are in the audience. But this time, just for a little bit, the restricted page, the restricted screen that came up when Paladin Strait was being teased, comes up on the screen. So despite the growing power of the citizens and all of these people that are joining the rebellion or inviting people to join the rebellion, Blurryface and the bishops are making it known that they still see what's happening and they still have the ability to influence it. Especially thinking about what we saw in the Paladin Strait video, where Tyler had this diversion planned so that he could get up to the towers, but if they were watching the whole time, that explains a lot for why the plan maybe didn't go how they wanted. He comes up to the tower, Nico is not there, and then he gets surprised. If they already knew that there were diversions, if they already knew that Tyler was coming, they were able to prepare for him being there. And on top of that, depending on how far ahead they were planning, it's possible that the bishops that he took down in the video weren't even the real bishops, because they knew about the diversions, if they knew what was going on, they easily could have escaped. And similar to what we saw in the Saturday video, where the bishops that are on the ship are not the real bishops, it could be the same thing here, right? And then Nico was so easily able to overpower him. And then when we apply that to the actual letters that we're getting, you have to think about the fact that it says Dema at the top, United Violist, right on top of the page, and the only time we've seen that is when it's coming directly from the city. These letters are ripped, and they're smeared, and they're all messed up, but they're typed, which yes, could just mean they're typing as citizens of Dema, because when Clancy was in the city, he was typing on his typewriter. It only turned handwritten once he had gotten out. But the fact that these are on these labeled pages as part of the city's property, it's looking to be as though the city got a hold of these letters between the citizens, took them as evidence or something. And all of a sudden, that makes everything feel a lot more menacing, because this is not just the communication between the citizens that we're seeing. This is the city mocking the rebellion by saying, we know about your plans, we saw your diversions, not only that, but we read directly what you were planning. If they got hold of these letters saying, here's what we're gonna do, we need you and you and you for all of these different things, we're interested, we're doing all this stuff together, and then the bishops get a hold of that, it's possible that these letters are being held as evidence against the rebelling citizens, or something like that. At the very least, it let them know what's going on. And that sucks to think about. Because you want to think that these people that we're watching are able to have a surprise attack, and then you realize just how far they were from completing that. On August 30th, the format of the letter changed a little bit because up until this point, they've been stapled up on the sides of tents in the Bandito camp. But letter 22 is stuck with red tape to the wall, which is not a huge difference, and who knows if it actually means something or if it's just the way that it's being displayed, but it is a change. It starts off with fragments of something about a fixture, and then it says, hardened and unable to feel the weightlessness of the Death Eaters, which are the vultures. Recently, I've realized you're just like me. While I had been assigned to the Necropolis Gardens, you've been assigned to your post. Still, unwavering. My days in the garden are lighter than your days against concrete. I felt compassion for you, so I picked the flower. I'm not sure if you knew the significance of the hue, but if you do, I would love to discuss. Your strength could be of great help to us. In bloom, Jarita. This is the second time in a couple of letters that we're seeing something about hues, which there are significant colors in 21 Pilots. This is nothing new. As tweeted by Blurryface in 2016, blue is a sign of defeat, yellow is the people that are going undercover through trench and trying to escape, and red is the rebellion. So there's all these people talking about hues and which ones are important. The two repeated letters in this are M and E, and there are more black smudges across the page. Really what this letter does is it gives us a bigger picture of the city and the inner workings and the people that are assigned different positions there. Like, we know there's somebody that's working under the city, and we know that this person is assigned to the gardens, this person has been assigned to, you know, there are all of these different jobs, and these are all people from different areas in the city that are reaching out and coming together, which means they have a lot of skills that they're putting together to create a very strong army. They have a lot of knowledge from a lot of different places about the inner workings of the city. It's hard to tell exactly what these people do in their day-to-day lives, but we can see that they're desperate to connect, and we can see that they appreciate the different things that they're able to bring to the table. August 31st brings us our second full, complete letter with text that connects the starting message to Nia and the ending that was signed off by Leo. Altogether, this one reads, Dear Nia, I'm embarrassed. For the hours I drift off, following the city's hidden catacombs, it never crossed my mind that someone would notice my absent-mindedness. It's true. I've memorized these paths and followed them through this concrete facade more times than I could possibly count. It's an obsession, and I know them like the back of my hand. Because I, like the movement you speak of, dream of escape. I have several methods that I've played out, but even if I make it outside, the bishops will find me, no matter how deep in trench I get, and take me back. Just like Clancy's message has assured us, destroying the vialistic system is the only help. Our enemy is not the structure, our enemy is their lies. I want to be part of what you are planning. United, Leo. This letter seems to be the most closely related to the Clancy letters that we're familiar with. It's using a lot of the similar phrases. Stuff like talking about the concrete walls and escaping and going into trench and being taken back by the bishops. That's all stuff that we saw with Clancy in his earliest letters. He escaped, he was taken back. No matter how far out into trench you go, they will find you and they will bring you back to the city of Dema. Again, we're directly mentioning Clancy and his efforts to lead this rebellion. And he doesn't just say he's inspired by it, but he directly says what Clancy is aiming to do, destroying the entire vialistic system. And then, of course, the letter ends with Leo agreeing to join this movement. The hidden letters on this page are L and L, but people notice there are also hidden numbers in the letter. Like, certain letters are switched out for numbers. There's a 3 and a 3 and a 2 within the pages, but it's not clear what those mean yet. It's possible that these are the start of another violation code or something, but as of right now, I haven't seen a clear answer on what these are either. And then totally separate from the letters and from the concert and everything that's been going on, they tweeted out a quote from the show Arcane, which is hinting that they might be putting out a single for it, and then that was confirmed pretty soon after. The song The Line came out towards the end of November with the release of Arcane. Tyler explained that he wrote the song after the passing of his grandmother, so along with going with the theme of the show and what's happening in the scene, the song is obviously pretty intimate and personal. So you could argue that this is lore and that it's somehow all tied in, but I really like the idea that this song just stands alone as something separate. Thinking about it as like, oh, they're capable of still putting out really strong work. It doesn't just have to rely on the story behind it. Because sure, you could tie this song in to the lore. It'd be really easy. It's a sad song. And you could easily say, oh, this is written for the time where Clancy and Nico are facing off. My body's on the line. I can't fight anymore. Please don't let them see me. Like, he doesn't want to disappoint all the people that he's been leading this whole time. Like, there's a lot that you could, if you wanted to, shape it to fit the story. But do you have to? What does it add to the story? Nothing really, because we probably know how Clancy is feeling in that moment. He has been leading this rebellion this whole time. He's been telling all of these people to trust him, and now, in this moment where he thinks he's going to beat the bishops, ideally, and all of a sudden he's completely overtaken by Nico. I imagine he's a little bit ashamed of the fact that they didn't think of it. I imagine that he doesn't want the citizens to see what might be about to go down. And even if he follows through on something, which we're going to talk about as a possible theory, I don't think he'd want them to know that he's doing that either, because he has his own intentions, but in the moment it would look pretty bad. And I think it's really cool to see this song as just what it is. instead of trying to fit it in. I'm not saying it's not part of the lore, because that would bite me in the behind. And I guess you could tie it into the lore, but it's not really like a big thing. It's just a cool video, honestly. But I don't want to think about it that way. And if you haven't seen his live performance of it at the Game Awards, I definitely recommend that you watch it, because that is a beautiful vocal performance. You could definitely make it part of the story and the characters if you wanted to, but it's something that should be left alone. It's something that can speak for itself, and it's something that you don't really need to turn into something bigger. And we don't even need to, because we already have so much going on. On September 3rd, we pick up the letters again with number 003. The numbers don't really matter with us figuring out the order to these letters. If anything, it just shows us that Dema, the city, printed out all of these citizen letters and numbered them, but in terms of readability, it doesn't really do anything for us right now. I say that because when we were putting together number 1 and 2, we assumed that that third piece would be number 3, even though if you're going in reading order, that one should be 2 because it's on the right side, so regardless, it doesn't matter. But I was saying that because this one is numbered 003 and not the final piece of that first page, I don't know what significance the actual numbers on the corners of these pages have, because not all of the pages have numbers on them. Some of them are the middle of a page, or some of them are a corner that just doesn't have a number. So I don't know who put the numbers or why, because if we're going off of the 1, 2, 3 thing, then it's clearly not putting together full pages for us, but they're also not coming in the order that we're finding them. So I don't know. I'm not saying that there's no point to the numbers at all, but they don't serve a purpose when it comes to actually putting together the pages. It's a lot more about the shape and the way that the lines flow. Rather than being stapled to a tent or taped to a barrel, this one is stuck to the side of a mirror with yellow tape this time. And it says, "Dear Arya, guilty as charged. I feel it too, and I do see the fire in your artwork. It caused me to detect a like-minded rebellion in you. It stirred something in me, a feeling that has been dormant for so long. That its reemergence has invigorated me with newfound tenacity, a tenacity that I too have been. Finally, there is." Cuts off again. This is our first time seeing a repeated name. The first time it was a letter from Arya, this time it is to, so we can assume that this is a response from the person that they were writing to, which was Elliot. So while Arya was saying, "Hey, I noticed that you maybe see the same things that I do. Do you want to get out?" This is Elliot's confirmation. "Yes, I see it too. I want to get out." And the repeated letters in this are D and E. The next day, the top part of a letter is taped to a barrel with yellow tape, and this one has been written to Jansen, saying, "Dear Jansen, you have been a faithful and obedient loyalist to the bishops. There is honor in such diligence. But as scared as I am to confront your dedication, I have to urge you to look deeper to find the truth in the bishops and how they came into power. There are cracks, and these cracks should be revelation. They are a force." The repeated letters in this are R and O. And it's interesting because while everybody else seems pretty excited to rebel and destroy the system and join this rebellion and everything, Jansen is loyal to the bishops. He's faithful. He's obedient. This writer is trying to convince him to join the cause, but where he's at right now, he doesn't really seem to find a reason to. He's been following it without really questioning it up until this point. And I do think that's interesting because it shows that not everybody in the city is so aware of the problems that are going on, and maybe once it's brought to their attention, then they're like, "Oh, hey, actually, I see what you're saying." But there are still a lot of people that are very much just, "I'm gonna go with what's comfortable with what I always know," or "I'm gonna trust my leaders to do what's right." The next letter says, "Dear Mara, I am and always have been a devout violist. I obey and give thanks to the glorious like any good citizen should. This tradition is a comfort to me, and it is what I know. But I indeed have seen cracks. The bishops, our symbol of stoic control, have become frantic, and for the first time, unclear and worried about what is next. Keon's meant everything to me, and it's not but now I'm seeing, not vialism, I don't." The letters T and H are capitalized, and again, this shows us a little bit more of somebody that's trusting the bishops and their rule, and we can kind of assume that this is the same person that we were just hearing about. He did like the bishops up until very recently, where all of a sudden things are starting to seem less stable, particularly after the death of Keon's in Skeld and Icy. Because they're all still inviting each other to join the rebellion, we can assume that this is happening before Paladin Strait, before they're all together, but after the death of Keon's, after Skeld and Icy. This is when Clancy is making his efforts to bring everybody together, like we saw in Overcompensate. And then on September 7th, the letter 13 is found sitting on a pile of yellow flowers. It says, "Dear Frederick, the library must be a boring place, maybe the most boring place of our already dreadful concrete prison, but you don't seem like a librarian. Seem to have found a role in the city, access to information," and the only double letter there is C, which that letter doesn't really give us much of anything, besides the fact that Frederick is either a librarian or just spends a lot of time with the books. On September 9th, episode 2 of that World Tour series got posted on YouTube, and it has the same energy of appreciating where they're at and showing how much work they put into everything. It shows how big the feelings are when you're at one of those shows, but Just for a second, you can see Nico in his robes, how he is in the Paladin Straight video, and you could argue that it's just highlighting a cool part of the show and where we're at in the story, because it's like a flashback of all of these things, so it's like, okay, just for a second, we're gonna show this cool thing that we had been working on that's relevant. But when they post these videos, they don't usually include music video content like that. So it's possible that this is again trying to show us that the bishops are aware of what's going on and maybe are able to influence things. Then we have letter 9, which is tied through a rope to a tent, and it's a response letter to Leo. It says, "Dear Leo, I've noticed you in the square, the way you stare at the structure of our city, and even more, the way you trace the invisible paths between the ground and up the towers. There are few engineers in Dema, and your skill and knowledge, but only that the double letters in this are W and E, but we already know where this letter is going. We already know that Leo knows a lot about the city and the inner workings, and he's thought about which paths he would take to escape, and he already feels like it's impossible, but he wants to try and he agrees. But this is just giving us that introduction to the person that invited him. 016 comes out on September 11th, and it's taped in red. The letter says, "Echo, it's true. I know more than. I found more than I should have. Read contraband documents that. Increasingly difficult to stay silent. Age of Clancy's uprising. His fight is sparking emotions that most of us have never felt. Rebellion is contagious. I want to be a part of it. Let's meet. Ignited, Frederick." The letters are H, E, and M, and we have met Frederick before. He's the one that spends all his time in the library, so this is confirmation that he knows a lot more than the average person. He spends a lot of time reading these contraband documents. And again, he's inspired by Clancy. September 13th gives us the end of Sarah's letter to Frederick. She writes that they know they have been lied to by the bishops and that he can prove it with his knowledge. And it ends with the line, "Please consider hearing our plan." And as we've seen from his response, he agrees to join their cause. This page has the hidden letters M and E. The next letter is stuck with yellow tape, and it says, "Almost forgot I possessed, inspired by Clancy's boldness, someone that seems brave enough, some sort of uprising. I do want to be a part of this. There are so many things to fear, but perhaps my biggest fear is to do nothing. I am here, and I will go into battle. I will support the uprising in any way I can. East is up, Elliot." The hidden letters in this one are S and T, and as far as we know, Arya had written to Elliot in the first letter, so this is the completed response to that. Arya's artwork and the work of the rebellion is stirring up these dormant feelings regarding everything that's going on, and while it is scary, it's worse to do nothing. This is a fairly straightforward perspective. It's just somebody that knows that there's more, and they want to fight for it, even if it's difficult, because it's better to be out of it, or at least to have tried. I will say it is very satisfying after all of this time to start to get the ending of all of these letters, because it feels kind of hopeless when you're trying to piece together everything and you just don't know who's saying what to who, but as you start to learn a little bit more about these characters and what they're doing, what they're interested in, and how they want to help the rebellion, it starts to make a lot more sense, and it starts to be a lot more satisfying to get new ones every day. Letter 017 is on a piece of red tape, and it's addressed to Rihanna, who we have not seen before. It says, "You're just a silhouette to me, but your dances have become the moment I look forward to most each day. Have you snuck a music box into your room, or is there a song playing in your head? Your movements feel like peace to me, like you're translating freedom to this confined population. I want to hear what you're hearing. I often imagine my own song that matches your movements, and someday I hope I can sing it to you." And the double letters in that are A and N. And we can pair this starting of the letter to the one that ends signed off by Beria, and the letter overall is just so sweet. This is somebody that admires Rihanna's dancing, noting the freedom and weightlessness that is expressed, and says, "Hey, join us, you know what it's like out there." And it also shows us that along with stuff like writing music or writing down these words and physical art, there's also expression through dance that's bringing people together. There are all of these different creative outlets that are bringing people together after what's been done by the city. The next one is a response to that under yellow flowers, and it reads, "Dear Beria, that's me. I've always thought of myself as a lighthouse and less like a silhouette, but I'm sure my window looks more mysterious than the show I'm putting on in my head. A lighthouse, I suppose, that may be of hope, not one on dry land. I have, and it's beautiful. Terrifying, but beautiful. They've brought, I can't take those beautiful," and the letter is W. Letter 24 says, "They can even wonder if they, colors are. You were a great distraction that day. My bishop seemed more volatile than usual and said that I had lost my dedication. There's some truth to that, because when no one's around, I'm only looking up, tortured by the wonder of what the vultures see as they pass in and out of the walls so freely. An armed guard obsessed with trash dragons," he said. "How did he even know I was looking? But I daydream of the other side of the wall, and when I saw the flower, I knew you must daydream too. The serendipitous nature of the moment I found quite amusing, but more importantly, the rebellious nature of this mysterious plan has me quite intrigued. I would love to know more. Smirking, Kinton." The double letters in this are M, W, and E, and this is the first time in a while that we've seen a new name, which it is fun to meet a new character, but I am getting kind of tired of reading these letters. Anyways, September 20th brings us letter 10 in yellow tape, and it says, "Sight be quite valuable to our movement. If you feel it an unshareable yearning, must stop the oppression in the city for all. I can only hope that Clancy has created a wonder in you. We need your help. Your knowledge of the hidden structures of the city could give us the upper hand in catching the bishops off guard. Will you join us? Best, Nia." Which again, this is just completing another letter that we've seen of Leo and his knowledge of the city. The hidden letter in this was W, and around this time, people started to piece together what the hidden message was, because when you put all the letters in order, we get something that is almost definitely going to spell we must destroy them or we will become them, which makes a lot of sense with where they're at in the story. Obviously, they're trying to destroy the bishops, but more specifically the systems that the bishops have created. It's not so much the individuals as it is the entire system. If we don't destroy them, we will become them. We will keep following in their patterns. We will keep going in this cycle. The next letter is sitting on top of another yellow flower, but there's no top or bottom of this one. It's kind of just the middle of a page. It says, "Peered into, searching for, not a force of good. They are tradition. I have dug deeper, and I know this tradition has dark secrets, and this gone that they proclaim is honorable, I assure you, is anything but. I have found true freedom outside of these walls, and I yearn to return to that wild freedom. But we need help from people like you, people on the inside of the towers. I wouldn't." And the double letter in this is Y. This is another letter where there's a hidden 3 in it, but I don't know what the numbers are for. September 25th is held up by 2 thinner pieces of red tape on another mirror, and the letter says, "Beacon, been out, at times, but they, moments away from me. I remember them every night and play them over and over in my head, dancing as if to retrace my steps on a new way out. I too have been a quiet ally of Clancy, and his initiative gives me hope that we could get out and never be brought back. I want you all to feel what I felt out there. Let me help aid your plan in any way possible. There is beauty out there that we all need to see. The silhouette, Brianna." The double letter in this one is E, and of course this one connects back to the letter addressed to Beria, and it completes their little back and forth. And I will say, because she has escaped, she has a little bit more knowledge, so she could be a leading force in this rebellion just because she knows what it's like to escape, and she has that fuel that's actively, from experience, you know? It's not just that she wants to, it's that she has, and she knows how, and she knows how much it can mean. The next letter is very sweet, and it reads, "Dear Dorita, pretty name, pretty flower. I wonder if we'd ever get to speak. It's not every day that a citizen decorates me like you did, but I've certainly endured worse. I thought I would be reprimanded, but then I remembered they couldn't see it anyways. Just a lifeless weed in my pocket from their perspective. I wonder if, see the vibrance of their robes. I even remember what," and the letters in this are T, H, and E. This letter confirms that the flower mentioned earlier is yellow because it's something that the bishops can't see, and it's a pretty simple letter, but it shows how they are communicating through these smaller gestures, like handing off a yellow flower. The bishops can't see it, but the rebels know what it means. Then on September 28th, we get a letter which is wrapped around a lamp, and it's another middle of a page, so no receiver or sender, but it does go together to finish another page. The hidden letter in this one is E, and it says that the person doesn't know what it means to be a vilist anymore. All they see is deception and rage. They have a new passion to destroy the constructs that are deceiving them, and this fits in between the letter tomorrow from Jansen. If you can't tell from the shape of the papers, like when you're physically putting them together, you can definitely figure it out just by the tone that they take when they're talking about the city. After what happens to Keon's, Jansen starts to see the cracks within the system, and he's finally getting inspired to break out of it. The next day, we get the completion of Mara's letter to him that was inviting him to join the rebellion, and it says, "I'm hoping we can break them open. I hope you join us in destroying this tyranny. I hope you join our quest for actual glory. Sincerely, Mara." There are no hidden letters in this one. Letter 21 says, "Dear Kenton, I was the girl that put the yellow flower in your front pocket as you stood guard. I think I saw a smirk. We noticed you daily and take wagers on what day you'll finally crack. But you stand at your post, solid as a statue, day after day. I must admit it bothered me at first, as I eyes more and more to the corruption, system that keeps our spirits confined, feel a distaste for every institutional that supports it, I've often." The letters in this one are E, C, and O, and I like how straightforward this letter is at appreciating individuals while still calling out the institutions. Yes, Kenton is still working as a guard in the city, but at the same time, it's not his fault, and combining 21 and 22 gives us another full letter. October 2nd gives us a tiny little scrap of a letter that is largely covered by black ink, and all we can really read in the corner is, you now, it's time, Clancy. They are ready to defeat. The double letter on this one is T, and hey, what was that? It's time, Clancy? On the page, Clancy, the name, is scratched out pretty bad in the black ink, but with the context of the rest of the page, it does become more clear, and it's possible that this letter was written to Clancy as a way to say, hey, take the next step, let's lead this rebellion, let's get things moving. If that's the case, if this is addressed to Clancy, Who is it from? On October 4th, we get another completed letter, which this one is from Sarah to Frederick, and the page wraps up what we already know about Frederick, how his work in the library must be boring, but he seems to be seeking knowledge, and he does have information that the other people do not, and the movement is interested in what he knows. The double letters in this are O and M. Letter 26 says, that, surface, and I would. You want to teach me? In fact, I'm part of a large group that is quite curious, and if you're interested, you could even join us. I'm sure it's lonely down there, saddened by the gone, as you bend and twist their gravestones. I'm sure you've seen their faces, or remember your encounters with them. We all miss them, but you have to see them all off. I'm sure it feels wrong at times. I would love to talk about that too. We could meet in your district if you find a short leave. I can't wait to learn more. Curious, Carta. And we've already read about somebody that is down below the city. Somebody that is not supposed to be talking about the work that they're doing, somebody that is stained, right? And now we know that that work involves the creation of the neon gravestones, and also dealing with the glorious gone, the people that have passed, which means directly dealing with people that you lived with in the city. That's why it's so difficult, is you're actively having to deal with the dead bodies of the people that have essentially sacrificed themselves to this religion. The double letters in this one are U, S, and T. And then the following day we receive a note from the torchbearer. It's taped up in red in the shape of their logo, and there's a black handprint on the bottom of the page. The text itself reads, they believe this oppression to end, this archaic rule once and for all. We can meet out and trench at camp to lay out our plan. We will bring you everything you need. We have support from yellow and red now, and our militia is strong. No matter what, when that day comes, we will get you to the tower. Covering you, TB. The torchbearer in this letter is reaching out to Clancy and encouraging him to act out on their plan and promising to protect him, but the handprint on it and the Dema label on all the pages makes it seem as though this letter may have been intercepted before it ever reached Clancy. If that's the case, again, that would be a large part of why the bishops are so aware of the rebellion, is because they're reading it firsthand when all of these things are supposed to be happening, but it's also not clear if Clancy ever received this letter. This is the torchbearer saying, hey, we're here for you, we're ready, we're gonna get you up there, and obviously they did end up getting him up there in the end, but as we saw from the Navigating music video, the torchbearer was not physically there. Clancy was doing all of this alone, so if he never saw this letter that is saying, we're here for you, we have all the support, we're ready for you, we want you to come back and lead this. If he never saw that, how much of this story does Clancy think he's been fighting alone? And the same day that this letter came out, people noticed black handprints on the side of the truck, matching the one that was at the bottom of this letter. O25 keeps going with the letter from Carta to the person working with the gone, and it says how his blackened hands say that he works in death, or as the city calls it, glory, and she invites him to join the group because they're curious about the work that he does. This letter is written to Pierre, and the repeated letter is M. And we pretty much did already get this message. We kind of knew what the back and forth was between them, but the next day we do get the end of his response where he says, I want to teach you what I know, even more, I want to teach you how I believe we can break the cycle. Which isn't that what this is all about? Breaking out of destructive cycles and harmful mindsets and damaging systems and all of it. So we have some people that are still loyalists, they're still obedient. We have some people that realize something's wrong and want to do what they can. There are some people that have been plotting and looking at the entire city and trying to find the best ways to take it down. And there are some people that know that they need to destroy the entire system, the entire vialistic system. The next letter is another middle segment, but there are only so many days left, so we know who it is. It says, your daily ritual down in this, fire and elements to create a monument for the latest glory is gone. I can tell you that after this many years down here, the glory has indeed faded. It's only madness. There was a time where I believed it was the truth, but that time passed. And if I had to guess, I would say this is from Pierre to Carta. He's not proud of his work, he's embarrassed by it, and he does want to join the movement that's going to break this cycle. The neon gravestones are and always have been a crucial element in the story because they represent the entire idea of vialism and what it all represents, glorifying death and celebrating it with these giant gravestones rather than celebrating life itself. So recruiting somebody that works directly with the neon gravestones and with the bodies and has knowledge of how they put that together and how it all works would probably give them a lot of crucial information on how to fight back against it. And this is the type of work that we can see in the Nico and the Niners video, because while they're all down there working, being taught by the bishops, they look up. They're down under the city. And with that, we have made it to the last day of the tour, October 12th. A lot of things happened on this day, one of them being Blurryface tweeted out again, this time with a black and white image of a section of the FPE lounge. It's an image of a robe, and you can see a piece of the letter hanging on the robe. But along with this letter, which we're going to talk about in a second, there are also pages scattered all around, and they're all labeled Dear Clancy, and they're covered in messy black fingerprints, and it's pretty intense. It's pretty threatening looking. The scattered pages are from the city of Dema, and it says, "The enemies of the city are planning to take your city from you. We have watched their plans come together. The sacred municipality of Dema will keep you safe. Report any unusual perimeter activity immediately." All of that scattered on the ground, labeled in big, bold, red letter, Dear Clancy. And the final letter reveals a message from the torchbearer to Clancy. It's that final piece of the letter that says, "Dear Clancy, you are what they said you were. I see the weathering on your face and the journey you've been on. Although we were away, I hope you know now that I've never left you. It's time, Clancy. They believe in the movement. They are ready for this oppression to end. They are ready to defeat this archaic rule once and for all. We can meet out in trench at camp to lay out our plan. We will bring you everything you need. We have support from Yellow and Red now, and our militia is strong. No matter what, when the day comes, we will get you to the tower. Covering you, Torchbearer." And the hidden letters in this spell out better. The final hidden message is confirmed to be, "We must destroy them or we will become them, and if we become them, we must do better." All of these letters are leading up to what we saw in Paladin Strait. But still, after all of this, we don't know where it's going. We had been complaining all of this time about how they were hyping it up as being this lore-heavy album, and then it came out, and it was kind of underwhelming, and now they gave us all of this, and all of this is the content within the album. This still isn't what happens next. And I know, it's kind of repetitive because we did just talk about all of the letters, but we talked about them in their segments, and I kind of want to go over them all in order, just to get a better idea of what's being asked of these citizens, and who's talking to who, and that type of thing. Which I will say, oddly enough, it seems like a majority of these communications are initiated by more feminine names to the guys, but fair disclaimer, I don't know for any of these characters, for one thing, how to pronounce their names, but also what pronouns they may or may not use. I really hate to assume based on name alone, because even name, like being gendered, it's based on location, so I don't want to say one thing and have it be wrong. I wanted to mention it because I don't know for sure for any of these characters. But if you are curious to hear about these letters from somewhere else, obviously go check out the letters on the website where people put them all together, but also watch Good Day Dema's recap of all of the letters where they talk about it. So really quickly, letters 1 and 2 are communications between Arya and Elliot. The first is from Arya to Elliot saying, "Hey, you can see something deeper in my art. We are connecting over this thing. I don't know if you see it, but I'm hoping you do, and I hope that you join us because we would appreciate it." Elliot's return letter confirms that he does sense the rebellion, he does feel it too, and he wants to join the uprising, which he does sign off with the line, "East is up," which is something that we saw way back at the very beginning of Trench, and it's something that was used by escapees to communicate how to leave the city of Dema. If you go east, you're going up into Trench, you're gonna leave. And the way that these people sign off on their letters does feel a little bit significant to me. First of all, because it's just really cool to look at, seeing somebody sign off as "East is up" after so long of not seeing that phrase. Anyways, 3 and 4 are between Mara and Jensen. Mara writes first, noting that he has been obedient to the bishops, but he needs to start looking at the cracks, writing, "They are not a force of good, they are merely a force of tradition. The rebellion needs help from people inside the towers, and because Mara sensed that Jensen had started to doubt the structures around him, she invites him to join." And Jensen confirms that he has always followed the traditions of vialism, but he's starting to see that things are not as they've been. He knows that things are not right, and he found a new passion for destroying the constructs that have been controlling them. This one is signed off with Salo, which is Salo Felina, like another bandito thing. This is what they cry out in Trench when they're in need. So again, we have somebody who is at least a little bit aware of the bandito movement. Letters 5 and 6 are between Nia and Leo, and it seems as though Leo is an engineer in the city. He has a lot of knowledge about the hidden paths and the buildings, and they want him in the rebellion. He's a little bit worried that even if he does escape, the bishops will bring him back, but he does also agree to join the movement. And I thought it was interesting because he signs off with United Leo. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with the word united, because yes, they are united in this rebellion, but also, hey, United Vialists. The top of each of these pages has that mark, Sacred Municipality of Dema, United Vialists. So I thought it was weird that he's signing off as United, because yes, it could be also to be kind of making fun of Dema and of the bishops. It could be to kind of reclaim that word as their own, but I sure think it's weird. Out of all the words to choose to show your loyalty, you're gonna choose United when United Vialists are right there. It could just be habit, you know, but I don't know. It gives me a bad vibe. I don't like that one. 7 and 8 happen between Sarah and Frederick, where Frederick spends a lot of time in the library. He's getting a lot of knowledge that the other people might not have. The bishops make it seem as though vialism is this ancient practice, but that might not be the case. Having this information would help confirm that what they're being taught is lies, and that's really what they're trying to defeat, is the structure that's based on lies. Frederick responds by confirming that he does know a lot more that he should, and in the age of Clancy's uprising, people are feeling new emotions that are sparked by the rebellion, and with a confident, ignited Frederick joins. Again, ignited, which we've seen a lot of fire imagery in these past couple of albums, so Leo's response does stand out to me as kind of weird. It could be nothing, but it also could be a very bad something. 9 and 10 are between Beria and Rihanna, and they're a bit more personal than the previous exchanges. Rather than being, hey, you have this good job, it'll help us, it's more like, hey, I admire you as a person, do you want to work with us? Rihanna dances in a way that translates freedom, and it's clear that she has escaped the walls of Dema. Beria says you must want to escape again, and you can come with us, and we can all escape together, and Rihanna confirms that yes, there is so much out there, and it is so beautiful, and we all need to see it. She's been a quiet ally of Clancy, and mentions that his work is giving them hope, and again, we see another person joining the rebellion. 11 and 12 are between Drita and Kinton, which again, these are a little bit more personal. This is the two where there's a yellow flower being passed along. Drita places a yellow flower into Kinton's pocket, and we learn that they are working as a guard for something. We don't know exactly what for. Regardless, the job is something that upholds the system, right? But at the end of the day, they're both just working. And the first letter says, if you know what the meaning of the yellow flower is, then maybe we could work together, which Kinton responds by saying, yes, I do know what the yellow and the flowers are, and I am jealous of the vultures that get to see what's beyond the walls. I too want to learn more. I will join the cause. There's less to say about the sign-offs for this one, and also the last exchange, because for Rihanna it was the silhouette, because that was calling back to what she was called. For this one, Kinton signed off as smirking, because that's what Drita wrote. I gave you the yellow flower and I thought you were smirking. Letter 13 and 14 are between Carta and Pierre. Pierre works below the towers. As seen by his blackened hands, he works with the dead. More specifically, with the neon gravestones. Carta says that this work must be extremely difficult, but that knowledge about what's going on there would be extremely helpful to the rebellion, and Pierre responds by saying that the glory of the work that he's doing has faded. They no longer believe the work that's happening represents the truth, so again, I want to teach you how we can break this cycle. And then the final letter that we get does not get a response, it's just one, and it's from the torchbearer to Clancy. We see in the journey that Clancy has been on, but confirms that he was never alone, and this letter ultimately is a call to action. It's saying, hey, I got my guys together, you just have to show up and we'll get this thing done. I don't know if it was ever defined exactly what the difference between the yellow and the red is, but in this he says that they're both working together. As far as I know, yellow is like the secret ones, the ones trying to escape because they're wearing the color that the bishops can't see. So they're more focused on getting out of the city, whereas red is a lot more focused on fully taking it down. At the end of the day, they do all kind of have the same goal, which is just getting out of the control of the bishops and the system of vialism and all of that. And then the torchbearer signs off with the phrase covering you, which is seen in Jumpsuit. When Clancy first escapes, he's calling out, Jumpsuit, cover me. And this is confirmation from the torchbearer saying, hey, you do have this team behind you, you do have people covering you. At the end of the fight, the torchbearer will be there. And that's the thing that sucks, is if Clancy never got this message, which is possible that he got the message and he started acting on it right away, but there's no response letter, and that makes it a lot less clear how Clancy feels about this whole situation. Because it seems a lot more likely that this letter never got that far, and that means that Clancy had been working alone this whole time and never even knew how much support was there. Anyways, the final message says we must destroy them or we will become them, and if we become them, then we must do better. They have to destroy the system that the bishops created, fully breaking down the cycle and getting free. If you don't destroy the system, you're gonna end up following the same paths, and if you end up following the same path at some point, you have to do better. Yes, you may take the easy route and just follow what has been taught, but at a certain point you have to start pushing your own ideas. You have to be like, okay, this is not correct and I'm gonna make a change. And we could see this with a shift in the power dynamics of the story. If, for example, Clancy becomes a bishop. Let's say that Clancy goes up into that tower, he's ready to take down all the bishops, but instead they kind of turned it around and ambush him. All of a sudden, we must destroy them is out of the picture. We will become them, and if we become them, we must do better. So it could be become them in terms of power. It could be, okay, now I have to become this leader, and then I will do better by leading these people towards ideas that are more beneficial towards us all. But it could also be more literal. I will become them, as in Clancy could become a bishop, because there is a gap from where Keon's is left. And something that people noticed is that the Clancy letter, the very last one that's stapled to a bishop robe, is actually Keon's robe that was from a different section of the display. It's a robe that is for Keons, who is no longer with us. And obviously it's saying, Dear Clancy, so what if it's saying, hey Clancy, not only this letter, but this robe is for you? And if that's the case, then Clancy could become a bishop where he would have a lot of power, but he also would be kind of filling that role of the good bishop that Keons was. A lot of citizens said that out of all of the bishops, Keons was the one that they looked to. Keons was the kind one. So if Clancy fills that role, yes, the cycle would still continue. Yes, there would still be the bishops. Yes, all those ideas would still be circulating, but he could use his power as a higher ranking person to slowly start to shift things over time. But obviously, ideally, if they can, they're going to tear the whole system down. And then, of course, there is that final message from the city that's saying, hey, we're gonna keep you safe, don't even worry about it. The message is coming directly from the city of Dema, but because it's found on the floor of the exhibit, it feels like they're very, very close by. And like we saw from the earlier tweet, they know about the diversions. They know what's going on. They know about the rebellion. So especially when they're moving the bishop robe and they're putting these messages all over, right where the citizens are gonna be or where the fans are gonna be or whatever, it's very mocking, you know? Like throwing all of that stuff everywhere or moving the robe or writing on the pages or even taking the pages in the first place, putting them up like this. It all feels like it's making a big joke out of the rebellion. Like it's saying, we knew everything this whole time. How did you think you could get better than us when we have so much power and knowledge and all of that? As hard as the rebellion is working, it seems like the bishops are somehow always one step ahead. And the thing is, they could even want to recruit Clancy for his power and his influence over the people that are rebelling. Because if he joins the bishops, let's say all of a sudden all of the people that are following him are going to be like, okay, well maybe he's got good intentions, maybe let's follow him, and then maybe they're all gonna start believing in the bishops again. So it's like at that point, they haven't destroyed the system, so Tyler would have to somehow single-handedly change what's going on, while also presenting as the thing that they had been fighting against. That brings us to the final show of the tour, which, again, the judge was playing and it got interrupted, this time not by a restricted page, but by the two bishops that had been hosting the Skeldon IC livestream event, and it's just, again, it's just for a flash. Nothing else really changes, but the bishops are still peeking through in these little ways. There is one other thing that I want to mention here, but I'm not going to go too in-depth with it just because I can't even see it or really understand it myself. So all credit goes to the people that have been looking at it, again, specifically Keons, who made a really good video about it. Throughout all of the shows, Tyler has been wearing different shirts, and they've had different prints on the front with real-life images, or paintings, or art, whatever. There are images of gravestones, of a statue of death, of a man with his head severed, of a severed head, of catacombs in Rome. It's very dark imagery, but obviously a lot of that ties into the story. Everything about death and religion and, you know, these are not like new, shocking images, but the fact that he is committing to wearing all of these shirts it's telling us something, right? At the very least, it's more fun Easter eggs, but at this point, I don't think we can really call anything an Easter egg because everything is something with these guys. There's a little gap in the timeline here because that's where they put out the line and they also had stopped going on tour for the rest of the year, so the next thing that we see isn't actually until December 1st, which is Tyler's birthday, because he puts out a tweet that's like, hey, thanks for being here for my birthday, but there's also a mirror selfie of him where he's wearing the stuff that he wears in the lore videos. He's got this t-shirt on that he doesn't wear during the concert at all. He's only worn it in a couple of the more recent music videos, and he's got his usual black paint on. So initially you could be like, oh, this is just an unreleased picture from back when they were recording those videos, but people notice that his hair doesn't line up with what it would have been in those videos, so it looks like something a little bit newer. So of course, the immediate thought is, what if there are more music videos that are being recorded? And if there's more music videos, then maybe there's more music. There's also a lot of people always saying, oh, what if they're gonna put out new stuff, but with their old songs, because you can tie a lot of their old songs in with the themes that are still being presented, or it's possible that they're writing entirely new songs that are gonna complete the story. We don't know yet, really, what that picture was from. But then they announced that the FPE would be coming with them on the Europe and UK tour. So first we had, this is just a stationary one-time event, you can't take pictures, it's just here for whoever, and I believe that's where we got the Clancy Ultimate Chapter 25 thing, which we still don't know what that is, but if it's the year 2025, there's probably something coming soon. But then they were like, hey, we're taking this with us, but only on the US and Canada portion of the tour, and then, once that completed, they're like, hey, actually, just kidding, we're gonna take it on the next leg of the tour with us. And as of right now, obviously, we don't know what's gonna be at that exhibit, because the tour doesn't start until next week, but if it's anything like what we got the past couple of months, there's gonna be a whole lot more hidden in there. I'm really hoping it's not more letters, just because the secret communication between all the citizens was like building up to the rebellion, which we've now seen in Paladin Strait. So now what we really need to know is what happens when they face off. So I don't know what it could be. I feel like at that point, more letters would kind of be a step back. I mean, you definitely could do more letters, but you'd have to do something with the story past just, hey, we're still planning, we're still rebelling, you know? You gotta start establishing whatever comes next, right? But that's where we're at right now. We don't know what's gonna come with this next portion of the tour. We don't know what could come after. I will say the Blurryface album does turn 10 in May, so it's possible that they're going to do some sort of anniversary wrap up and finish around then, because that's also going to be around the 1-year anniversary of when Clancy came out. But it's really anyone's guess as to what could happen between now and then. So I think in terms of catching up for the US and Canada tour, that's really all I have for you. If they do something else cryptic like that for the next leg of the tour, I'll definitely jump in and fill us in then, because I can only assume that after that portion of the tour, they're probably going to do something else even bigger. So I want us to make sure we're all on the same page before the big ending. It was very exciting and very nostalgic to get back into the story, because I was so excited about it pretty much this time last year. So it felt really good to revisit that world and to get back into the community a little bit. But it's like I'm already missing it, you know? I already know that it is such a big thing for all of us right now. And I know that because of that, it's gonna hurt so bad to look back at it in a couple of years and be like, oh, remember when all of this was coming out? Because I've seen people saying like, oh, remember a year ago in December of 2023, and they weren't giving us anything, and they were radio silent, and we felt so sad because we just wanted more stuff to come out. And then look at us now, we're getting nightly letters. But it's like I'm already mourning this period, because I know there's going to be a time in the future where this doesn't exist. Which is fine, because all good stories must come to an end. And I'm really excited for it to end and for them to move on to bigger and better projects, or for them to take a step back, because this is a lot of work. But I'm missing it already. Like, even taking a step away for 6 months and then coming back to it, I already miss what it was when there was that first anticipation about what the album could be. And now we're so deep into it, and I just don't know what's coming next, and I don't know how much longer we have with this world. So that's where I'm at right now. I will probably be seeing you guys pretty soon. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out some of my other videos, go ahead and do that. Helps me out. You already know. I'll see you later.